Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I cannot even complain about the heat. It's so hot that you even have a wet towel. When we were growing up, we used to laugh at the teachers or people that we used to see having towels with them. Today, what I want us to talk about at Corona is the question that do you have the emotional capacity to handle friendship or relationship? Do you have emotional capacity? Especially, let's talk about friendship, but is the concept also on relationship? I've realized that most of us, we don't have that emotional capacity to be in relationship, be in friendships. What I've realized is that when two people, it can be friends or whatever, when they're having an argument or disagreement, we tend to shut down. I don't know if we are not adult enough to have a disagreement with our friends. Let's concentrate more on friends. We don't seem to have emotional capacity that we can have a disagreement with our friends and then the friendship continues. It's like if we have a disagreements or argument, you find that then the mode of communication gets shut down. It gets shut down because the other one, you stop calling each other, you stop texting each other, the tone changes. And I ask myself is that as mothers, as aunts, as fathers, as uncles, and whatever that you can be, if you don't have emotional capacity to handle conflict, how will you teach your kids, how will you teach your nieces and your nephews and your siblings and to handle conflict in general? I don't know if I'm making sense. There is no way that two people can always agree on on everything all the time. There is no way that we can always see things the same way all the time. But the question is that do you have the emotional capacity to recognize that you have different opinions, you have different views, you have different perspective on things, and it doesn't interfere with the friendship that we have? I don't know how it is with men on the other side, because I cannot speak on men, because I'll speak more on women. But most of us, we seem not to have emotional capacity to handle a friendship. We don't have it. It's like we were not taught how to handle conflict or disagreement. Let me not use conflict, but even if it's conflict, it's like, but we were not taught that you can have a disagreement and then it doesn't impact on the relationship that we have with this person. But it seems like especially women, once there's a disagreement and whatever, there should be tension. There will be tension, there will be silence treatment, there will just be a cold tone altogether there. Yes, we may not have been raised to have the, I don't want to call it emotional intelligence. We might not have been raised to handle disagreement and conflict. But as we get older as adults and we meet different people, we are at the workplace, you are meeting people from different backgrounds and different upbringing and different everything and different everything. How do you cope with people, with your colleagues, if you cannot handle conflict? How do you cope and have a healthy relationship with your colleagues if you cannot handle disagreement? The presence of disagreement or the presence of not seeing things in the same perspective and same eye doesn't mean that people don't like each other. But I find that mostly women, they cannot handle disagreement. If I tell you now, you know what, I don't like 1, 2, 3 what you said. Most of the time you'll find as women in the relationship, that friendship it's gonna be strained unless there's one who's always compromising. Unless if there's one who's always compromising, who will ignore the disagreement and everything and said, you know what, let's move on from that. You need to ask yourself, do you have the emotional capacity to handle friendship, to handle relationship, to handle relationship with your colleagues, anything which has to do with human beings? Do you have the capacity? Do you understand and train yourself for it to have different views? It doesn't mean people are fighting. How will you grow if you are with people who are always agreeing with you with whatever you are saying? How will you grow as a human being? How will you see the other side of the coin if you think that your view is always correct? How will we grow? I'm including myself there. How will you grow as a human being if you think your perspective is right? Or if somebody tells you their truth, I didn't like 1, 2, 3, and you retaliate or you go back to your shell. There's a lot of stress that we are going through, different kind of stress that with this pandemic and whatever, there's a lot of different stresses that we have. But some of the tension that we have, we bring it on to ourselves. Because we have not taught ourselves how to handle friendship, relationships when it comes to conflict. We don't have the skills to handle disagreement, conflict, different opinions. We think the best way to handle it is to walk away or to go back to your shell, as I've mentioned before. And if a person, how will you know your loved ones if there's never a space for a disagreement? How will you know your friends if there is no space for disagreement? And it's you view life as the way you see it. And even if you realize that you have wronged someone, then you go back to your shell, and then it's like the friendship now has to end, or relationship. I think like I said before, we have so many stresses and tension that we're going through. Some of the things are not necessary. Some of the things we must not be going through. You cannot be stressing about finance. You cannot be stressing about panic of health. You cannot be stressing about mourning of loved ones and the ones who are sick and all that. It's like death has become so normal. And then we fail also to grow on the side of emotions, emotional maturity. So wherever you are, I want you to ask yourself, do you have the capacity to handle friendship, relationship, or anything that is friendship, relationship? Do you have the emotional capacity? Do you have the skills? It's something that we never think about it. We just take it for granted that we have. I'm a human being, the other person is a human being. It means I have that capacity. No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. So you also have to look at yourself and including myself, and ask yourself, have I grown since this COVID? This were a corona. Have I grown emotionally? Am that kind of person that just goes with the wind? Anything that comes along, it will just sweep you off like waves. Yo, guys, it's hot. So yeah, so that is the question that was just pondering in my head today, and I just want you to think about it and ask yourself that question and answer yourself honestly. Do you have emotional capacity to handle friendship? Do you have emotional capacity to handle a relationship? Do you have emotional capacity to handle conflict? Do you have emotional capacity to handle differences? Do you have emotional intelligence to accept different perception and opinions? That is the question that you ask yourself every day. Thank you.